Recording in progress. There we go. Good evening. I would like to welcome the executive pastor, Jim Boyle, with City Church, who will lead us in tonight's invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If everyone would bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to gather today as a community. I pray that your wisdom descends upon this council and all who come to speak before it. Watch over us, keep us on your path, and it's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, August 4th, 2025 to order. The city encourages you to review tonight's agenda carefully. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. While the Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the clerk calls the agenda item, once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for that August 4th, 2025 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. As the mayor mentioned, if you would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to that agenda item being called. All speakers will identify themselves with name, address, and/or organization before beginning their comment. If you are representing an organization, a notarized affidavit is required stating you have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Please review tonight's agenda, and if you would like to make a comment, please bring your comment cards to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation may be asked to leave. Mayor and Council, as I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Peyton Jamison.
Here.
Councilmember Andrea Veerhoff.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Carol Cookerly.
Here.
Councilmember Jan Jacobus. I got off in my empty chair. And Councilmember Phil Kramer.
Here.
For the record, Councilmember Juliet Johnson is absent. Mayor, you do have a quorum. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Johnson will be here. Just first day of school, I guess, throwing everybody off a little bit today. Next is the approval of the meeting agenda. I would like to add an executive session to discuss personnel, land acquisition, and litigation. Do I have a motion on the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion we approve the agenda as proposed.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Cookerly and a second from Councilmember Jacobus to approve the meeting agenda with the addition of an executive session. Please place your votes. Go for it. Okay, that motion. Councilmember Kramer, I think you got
Yeah, it's good. Oh. I did approve it. I voted yay, but it's not taking it.
Okay, so,
I can do it for you. Do you
Thank you.
want me to push through? Are you a yay?
I'm a yay.
okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
We do, Mayor.
Okay, general public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and the city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. Please remember, this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name, address, and organization for the record. If you will please call the first public comment.
Mayor, I invite Mr. Nick Scarimbolo to the podium, please.
My name is Nick Scarimbolo. I live at 1110 Crowbot Way in Milton, and I'm here on behalf of the local chapter of Gideon's International to thank the mayor and the entire council. The Gideons have been a participant in Crabapple Festival, I think, since its inception. And recently we were not granted, but sent a letter to the council. In 2 days, we were back in. I just wanted to thank you, not only on behalf of the Gideons, but on behalf of the community, that we're allowed to be present at the Crabapple Festival and give out Bibles free of charge and answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for the little Bibles.
You're welcome.
Very nice.
If you will please call the next speaker.
Mayor, I invite Christy Hayes to the podium.
Christy Hayes, 13585 Hopewell Road. I'm here tonight speaking in objection to the city's proposed ordinance to modify Chapter 4 of the code, specifically Article 6, Division 2, that would extend the permissible sale hours for microbreweries and microdistilleries from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., allowing these establishments to be open and serving alcohol every night of the week until midnight. The stated purpose of this exchange, according to the staff memo from the city manager, says, extending hours of operation reflects evolving community preferences and better supports the viability of these small manufacturing and retail businesses while remaining within reasonable limits. And to better align operating hours with community expectations. These proposed extended hours of operation seem at odds with the city's vision of Milton as a city recognized for its exceptionally high quality of life, strong sense of place and community, and dedication to preserving our rural heritage. Personally, my husband and I left Alpharetta, along with countless of other residents who moved to Milton from other communities, both within and outside the state, seeking the peace and quiet that Milton constantly trumpets. We appreciated that Milton provided a distinctly different environment from the hectic nightlife and overdevelopment happening in nearby communities, and moved to a place that described itself as a vibrant city, beloved for its proud community, beautiful natural resources, and small town feel. Allowing microbreweries and microdistilleries in Milton to serve alcohol until midnight, 7 days a week, is a baffling move for which there seems absolutely no need. Where are the residents clamoring for this within our community? As someone who lives within spitting distance from the Painted Horse Winery, I must assume a change in hours of these establishments will spread to farm wineries, a move I wholeheartedly disapprove. Frankly, I'm tired of standing before you, begging you to live up to your pledge to keep Milton, Milton. And I know you're tired of seeing me up here. I'll conclude by reminding you that your election slogans were promises made to Milton residents, and your support of changes like this to the city's ordinance will violate that promise and erode our trust in every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you please call the next speaker?
Mayor, I invite Mary Cronk to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Mary Cronk and I live at 600 Hickory Mill Lane. First, I want to thank the city and Public Works for the paving that was completed on Hopewell Road. The road's much smoother and the work was completed before school began, so that's a big win. My comments this evening are about first presentation agenda item number 25-206, Part 3 only, which, if approved on August 18th, would allow microbreweries and microdistilleries to extend their closing hour from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. 7 days a week. Last night I sent you an email, which I hope you've had an opportunity to read before the vote, that you will have an opportunity to read before the vote on the 18th. Tonight I'm going to share an abbreviated version of that email with just a few reasons why I respectfully ask council to not approve Part 3 of this agenda item. There are currently two businesses that fit in the microbrewery or microdistillery category, and both are located in Crabapple. Both of these businesses are great supporters of Milton and wonderful establishments, and I absolutely want them to thrive in Milton for a very long time. Please know that my comments are not a reflection of these specific businesses.
Just pull it down.
There we go. So what is Part 3 about? The executive summary in the red box on the screen explains the purpose or justification for the change to the ordinance and states that based on feedback and increased interest in local craft beverage establishments, the proposed change would extend the permissible sale hours to midnight. It further states extending hours of operation reflects evolving community preferences and better supports the viability of these small manufacturing and retail businesses while remaining within reasonable limits. Based on these statements, with the purpose for the change to the ordinance, you might expect that the current microbreweries are open until 10 p.m. every night and are having to turn customers away when they shut their doors at 10 p.m. And if that were the case, it would be a good indicator of evolving community preferences for later hours. However, that is not the case. Here are the hours of operation. Here are the hours of operation for both of these microbreweries. The days with red boxes around them are the days in which these businesses choose to close before 10 p.m. And you can see there are more red boxes than there are not red boxes. So even though they're allowed to be open until 10 p.m. 7 days a week, these microbreweries choose to close by 9 p.m. 4 days a week and are closed on Mondays. Fridays and Saturdays are the only days they choose to be open until 10 p.m., which would seem to indicate that 5 days out of the week, it's not economically feasible for them to be open until 10, much less 12 a.m. Yet the change to the ordinance is requesting that microbreweries and microdistilleries be allowed to be open until 12 a.m., 7 days a week, due to feedback and increased interest in local craft beverage establishments. If you happen to be in Crab Apple after 9 p.m., in the areas where microbreweries are located, even on a Friday or Saturday evening, it's typically pretty quiet, as you would expect in this largely residential area of Milton, which also indicates that there's not enough interest in extending hours for microbreweries to justify allowing them to be open until 12 a.m., 7 days a week. Based on the current hours and conditions and the additional reasons and questions, particularly those about potential negative impacts that I raised in my email, there's no apparent economic reason or community push to allow microbreweries or microdistilleries to stay open until 12 a.m., 7 days a week.
1 minute.
Consequently, I respectfully ask that you do not approve Part 3 of this agenda item on August 18th. Thank you very much for your time and your careful consideration of this and all the other issues that come before council.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
That concludes general public comments.
Okay, I'll close public comment, and we will now move on to the consent agenda. Will City Clerk please sound the items?
Mayor, that first item is approval of the July 21st, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 25-200. Our next item is approval of the financial statements and investment report for the period ending June 30th, 2025, agenda item number 25-201. Our next item is approval of a services agreement between the City of Milton and Bounce House Inflatables of Atlanta, LLC, doing business as Bounce House Atlanta, regarding children activities for the city's annual Touch-a-Truck event. Agenda item number 25-202. Our next item is approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Milton and Fulton County for water line relocation on the Crabapple Road State Route 372 multi-use trail project. Agenda item number 25-203. Next is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and PEGA LLC, doing business as Palmer Engineering Company, for a structural condition assessment of the historic McConnell Chadwick House. Agenda item number 25-204. Our final consent agenda is approval of subdivision plats and revisions. The name of the first development is Brenda Eli, located at 14507 Cogburn Road. It's land lot 690. It's a minor plat to show the remaining area of Lot 3, which is a total of 1.472 acres, after a portion of this parcel was added to the Linden Creek subdivision. A total of 1.472 acres. Number 2 is the 13240 New Providence Road. It's land lot 996 and 997. It's a minor plat, and the purpose of this plat is to add 1 acre from adjacent northern property to Track 1 and reconfigure property line between Track 1 and Track 2 to create a 10.909 acre parcel for Track 1 and a 5.120 acre parcel for Track 2. It's a total of 16.029 acres with a density of 0.128 lots per acre. Mayor Jamison?
Thank you. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Make a motion to, excuse me, Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. Okay, have a motion from Councilman Jacobus and a second from Councilman Johnson to approve the consent agenda as read. Please place your votes.
Does not
I'm
like
I'm
it.
on minor plats.
Yeah, do it.
There we
It'll
are.
work.
It
It's
works.
the same one. There we go. That motion passes unanimously. Okay. We will now move on to reports and presentations. Will City Clerk please stay on the first item?
Mayor, that first item is the comprehensive summer internship final projects presentation. Our community engagement manager, Emily, there you are, Emily Salerno.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here once again to introduce you to some outstanding members of our city. I've had the pleasure of overseeing Milton's comprehensive summer internship program for college-age students, and I'm incredibly excited to introduce to you our 2025 class. Each year, I am truly amazed by the caliber of applicants who apply for this program. Their resumes are jam-packed with vigorous coursework, leadership roles, and extracurricular activities that make you wonder if they have more hours in their day than we do in ours. I often joke that we're hiring the people who are going to be taking our jobs one day, and if that's true, we are in truly excellent hands. Our 2025 interns have been exceptional members of our team who have exceeded every single expectation. Day one, they've jumped into their work with curiosity, professionalism, and the true tenacity of a bulldog. Their projects spanned across almost every department, and they approached each challenge with enthusiasm and thoughtfulness. But I'll stop trying to steal their thunder. I'll stop trying to give you any previews of the excellent work they did. I'd like to introduce Maddie Flores and Luke Neto.
David, can you show that presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are incredibly excited to discuss the work we've done here this summer with the City of Milton as comprehensive summer interns. Before we launch into discussing the projects we've done this summer, we'd like to take the chance to introduce ourselves.
Hi, my name is Maddie Flores. I am raised in Milton and I am a Georgia Bulldog. I'm going into my third year majoring in political science and public relations, along with getting a certificate in applied politics in the 10th cohort. I'm pleased to have interned this summer with the City of Milton. It has made my summer, so thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening, my name is Luke Neto. I am also a student at the University of Georgia, a rising sophomore studying political science and international affairs, minoring in religion and the pre-law track. So the internship this summer is overseen by the community outreach manager, Emily Salerno, who just introduced us. It's housed in the Parks and Recreation Department, but we spend our entire summer working on meaningful projects and tasks across every department within the City of Milton. Doing this, we meet with citizens, with businesses, and other stakeholders throughout the city to learn about their needs as far as city governance. We also learn from city staff about how to effectively run a city and provide for residents. Launching into those projects, one of the first things we did was the Milton Youth Government Leadership Program, which is Milton's high school internship program. We worked with our Human Resources Department and the Community Outreach Manager to further develop this high school internship program, including drafting an agreement between the interns and city staff about the interns' responsibilities, compiling a brief on the role of city staff as they serve as mentors for these high school interns, creating a presentation for city staff leadership on the program, and preparing a form to inventory potential projects for these interns. I was a former high school intern myself. I actually interned with our Public Works Department my senior year, and so I was very grateful for this opportunity to give back to the community, providing my experiences and my input to further improve this project. Long term, we expect that this will allow younger generations to have their experience with local city government and how to better address issues in their community.
Being a summer intern, July and June fall very square in our time here, and July is National Parks and Recreation Month. In order to celebrate this, we created a scavenger hunt highlighting opportunities for community members to explore various parks and green spaces in our community. We visited each and every one and drafted over 50 clues to create a family-friendly and team-oriented scavenger hunt around Milton's parks, recreation facilities, and encouraging residents to get outdoors and enjoy our beautiful Georgia summers. The city's offerings and amenities were all included in this. We also designed web pages for both the Parks and Recreation Month as a whole and the scavenger hunt in specific. This hunt can also be applied to future times where kids are out of school and families are looking for something to do, or if Milton adds new green spaces and parks, it can be easily edited and adapted to include those new spaces.
During our very first week at Milton, we had the opportunity to sit down and discuss our past experiences, our education, and our goals for this summer with Communications Manager Christy Weeks on Milton's official podcast, Milton in Maine. We discussed our background and our goals, and we actually just recorded our last episode today. Our goals are to advertise this internship to potential future interns, growing that internship pool and opportunity for talent. And as I said, we just recorded our last episode today, so stay tuned for what we talked about this afternoon.
Homeowners associations are something that are huge in Milton. We have hundreds of amazing neighborhoods, and we want to use those homeowners associations as a point of contact. I've been fortunate to collaborate with Christy Weeks and Communications Director Greg Botello to utilize HOA leadership boards to strengthen connections between City Hall and Milton residents. And reaching out to the points of contact that City Hall has for each Milton HOA, I sent a form to acknowledge how they need us to communicate with them, asking them how they talk to their residents and tailoring a special communication style to fit that. We created mediums for communications, including an email attachment, a QR code to a link tree that lists all of the points of connection for the City of Milton, a page on the city site, and even physical flyers for those HOAs that asked for it. There are several opportunities in future to learn more about the needs and stories of residents and through local leadership of HOAs. We also have potential to apply this to other similar Milton leaders. For example, if you own a restaurant and you want to include a small Milton flyer of how to connect with the city in your takeout order, we'd love to create that. Or if you're on a PTA/PTO board and want to use your newsletter to explain to residents how they can connect with their city, that's another part of how this program can reach into further. We also worked on mapping through the Parks GIS mapping project, visiting every park and public facility in Milton to catalog certain amenities. We utilize GIS mapping tools to plot the location coordinates of trail signage, parking, buildings, waste bins, and other amenities. This is useful for families that are planning their days out in nature and want to know what they need and how they can access it. It also has the potential to create an interactive trail map like those called for in our strategic plan for the 2021 to 2025 cycle. It can also be used by city staff for terms of maintenance purposes, is to know what needs to be updated and how is everything working. And there's also potential for signage or for safety applications. For example, if an emergency were to happen, and we can provide residents with an exact location of where is between trail marker 1 on the blue trail and trail marker 2, and get to them quickly and create a more rapid emergency response.
One of the projects that I had the opportunity to work on with our Public Works Department was working on branded manhole covers. The strategic plan calls for a branding project to heighten Milton's sense of place. And one of the ways that the city has explored doing that is implementing branded manhole covers with the city logo throughout some of Milton's character areas. I researched these covers, specifically talking to about 10 different municipalities across the state of Georgia, as well as 5 different foundries that specialize in these kinds of projects. This included an in-person meeting with one such foundry and our city engineer, Scott DeKotch, to go over project feasibility, costs, and other details. Long-term, we hope that this allows Public Works to continue this branding project with new information about internal foundry processes and costs. One of the other projects I had the opportunity to work on was a Deerfield implementation data project with Special Projects Director Bob Buscemi to create a spreadsheet that better accounts for various concept plans in each redevelopment parcel. The spreadsheet utilizes various formulas that can account for data input from up to 3 different concept plans from city, developers, and other entities who have ideas for each redevelopment parcel. This spreadsheet will input all of that data and then automatically calculate the projected impact fee using the impact fee schedule, note if there's zoning changes needed, whether the TDR program will be used, and the impact of each parcel's proposed plan on the total Deerfield ratio of residential to commercial, as well as that ratio within the sub-character area as defined by the city. Long-term, this will allow for city staff to calculate in real time the impact of each development on the city's vision for Deerfield and increase the opportunities for staff, leadership, and council like yourself to analyze hypothetical zoning changes and concept plans parcel to parcel.
Being here in July means we got to cover Independence Day, and that includes our Red, White, and You parade. We started out this event by creating a timeline, layouts, and completing a special events permit application. We also were able to meet with Milton Fire, Public Works, and Police, along with our executive aide to review logistics and approve the special event permit and make sure everyone is on the same page so we can have a safe and enjoyable event. Designing posters and signage to meet the needs of residents at the event, along with media posts to promote it. We also were able to collaborate with local Milton businesses and received and organized donations to our gift baskets. It's from dozens of businesses. Each basket had over $500 in market value of goods and services, and we even helped to manage on-site, and it was such a joy to get to experience and all that hard work come to fruition and see it on the faces of residents. And this was our highest attended Independence Day celebration yet, with over 1,200 people in attendance, and it was such a joy to experience that. We also hope that the impact we've made on this event can continue in years to come, and future success for the Red, White, and You event.
One of the largest projects that the two of us worked on all summer was working with City Manager Steve Krokoff on the strategic plan. So for context, the strategic plan was adopted in 2021 and was divided into 3 different categories. We had the strategic priorities, of which there were 3. Each of those had various strategic goals. And finally, a total of over 55 individual objectives that led to a need for public reporting of the city's successes and goal completion. We were using the ClearGov platform, which allows for the public reporting of things like public works projects, financial disclosures, and some strategic plan reporting. But it had various technical and logistical difficulties through the feature we were using. Until now, there was not a simple, accessible way for city staff to report progress on the strategic plan in a way for citizens to view live updates. The task we were given was threefold. A, identify gaps in reporting and update the ClearGov platform. B, convert the data that we collected into an easily accessible platform for citizens to view comments, measures, and data and other progress on the 2021 to 2025 strategic plan. And C, create a training for city staff and leadership to make future edits and ensure continuity in reporting. On that first note, updating the progress, to do that, we held up meetings with and contacted nearly every department in the city to ensure accurate information in the ClearGov platform. We made over 100 individual edits and updates to the ClearGov tracker, including the update or inclusion of charts and quantitative data, commentary and notes, attachments of files, changes to progress percentages, and more. To do this, we collected data on things like emergency vehicle response times, the city's financial data, sustainability and environmental initiative success rates, and other key performance indicators. Mayor and Council, if I could direct your attention to the chart at the bottom right of the screen, you'll notice the chart that tracks Milton's 3 strategic priorities with this latest plan. That highlighted section is where we come in. Prior to taking this project, the listed percentage of the city was at 65%. This does not mean the city was actually 65% done. It just means that's what was in the system as being completed. Now, at the closure of our term, the number accurately reflects the city's progress, which is 92% complete on the 2021 to 2025 strategic plan, which is pretty good saying that's 2025 right now. Second was taking that and making it public. We utilized a new feature of the ClearGov platform called ClearDocs to create an easily navigable page to track progress on the strategic plan. We designed pages to align with the approved strategic plan, explain navigation, and meet city branding standards. We launched the public version of this ClearDoc, allowing for any citizen to view the city's accurate real-time progress on its goals just a couple of weeks ago. So any citizen is able to access that and view all of the work we did and all of the work the city has done for the past 5 years.
We also wanted to develop a training module to make sure City of Milton employees can continue to use ClearGov thoroughly and clearly and know what they're reporting. We used our knowledge and skills of learning the program ourselves to develop a training for city staffs that accurately reports their progress. Typing up training packets included 3 major components of ClearGov of use, including the allowing for the city to use this tool for other planning, such as the comprehensive plan or department level strategic plans, and even more as the city develops and grows. We used an AI video tool to turn one of these training packets into a digestible 10-minute video with scene markers so city staff can reach exactly what they're looking for and how to accurately access ClearGov and update what they're working on. And finally, we are incredibly grateful for the fact that this program exists. This internship program has not only provided us with so many opportunities and loads of hands-on experience, it's not just a coffee internship, as Miss Emily Salerno likes to say, and it's not just a desk job. Now, Mr. Mayor and council members, we would love to answer any questions that you may have about our summer with the City of Milton.
Well, thank you. I think the citizens got their money's worth, so appreciate it. With that, I'll open it up for council with any questions.
I got one. Was there any particular project or department that changed your perspective on how city government works?
I think I'll go first on that. The strategic plan project that I mentioned was hugely impactful. Although much of the work seemed to be just spreadsheets and clerical data, much of it was talking to city departments and learning about how do we take these big 3 strategic priorities, how do we take the 5 values of the City of Milton and implement them into actual real-time results when you're just walking about the city. It was hugely impactful to see all of the small, minute details that I, as a resident, had never, ever noticed before. And then seeing those turn up from the start of my internship to now, walking down the street and noticing how, large are the sidewalks? How do the, buildings fit together to preserve rural heritage? How do we limit our large, make sure that we have large land lots as we develop? There's just so many things that are impacted by the strategic plan project that I had never noticed before, and it totally changed my mind.
I'll answer differently, slightly. I have really enjoyed my time working with the communications department to develop an HOA communications plan. It has been such a joy to get to connect with citizens on a deeper level and get to talk to them about how they want to be spoken to. What form of communication works best for them? It's actually given me, and I'll speak for others, that it's given us a pretty good sense of how citizens want to be talked to, what preferences. Like, we offered several different aspects that they could choose in forms of communication acting with the City of Milton, and the 2 were a link to the city website and an email attachment. People want things to be digital. I did have one ask for a physical flyer, and I gladly distributed that, but it is such a joy to work with them and understand and how to talk to people on a deeper level.
That's great. Thank you very much.
So I have a question. So we knew the staff was extremely bullish on you all, and now we understand why. That was a great presentation, and you're obviously very busy. What would you advise? What do you think is your one best skill that you brought to this that Emily and everybody else who makes the decision to find the next interns that somehow have to live up to you all? I just don't even know where that's going to happen. But what do you think is the skill that you just had, whether it's natural or learned? What do you think is the one skill that a future intern needs to have?
Great question.
I'll say be open to everything. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what's going to be on your desk tomorrow. And
so a can-do attitude?
Yeah,
okay.
Totally a can-do attitude.
I would say project management skills. You can see that in any kind of job you have, whether that's a regular 9-to-5 or a regular part-time job you may have as a high schooler. Being able to take on tasks and get them complete is absolutely necessary for this internship.
I think complete is a key word. Follow through.
100%.
Okay, thank you. Great answers. Thank you very much.
How long was your internship?
It's a 10-week internship for a total of 200 hours over the summer.
The amount of work you got done in 10 weeks is remarkable. Yeah, nice job. Great presentation. Here's my question. Each of you, if you were to define a project for the next round of interns next summer, what floats to the top of the list? Where you got broad exposure across multiple departments, where do you see an opportunity for the next 2 interns? Each of you give me the top project. Emily, make note for next year. Where do you see the opportunity?
I see a lot of potential in Deerfield. When I came in and I interviewed with Emily, she asked me, what is one project that you would like to work on this summer? And I said either Arnold Mill Small Area Plan or Deerfield. And having the opportunity to work with Babu Shemi, learning about Deerfield, I don't spend a lot of time over there, but I've been driving through and being able to recognize all of the potential that's over there, all of the things that go into it, whether it be zoning, the development, the public works side of things, the building of the roads, all of these different things, all of these details. There's so much potential for interns to be able to work hands-on in the development of this commercial district.
Say I see it in deepening community connections, particularly with our businesses. We are known for having some wonderful businesses in Milton, and I've gotten to work very closely with a lot of them, and I know they want to be a source of community connection. So I would love to see the next set of interns work with them to establish a way that they can connect citizens of Milton with City Hall and deepen community connections across.
Good. Great feedback. Thank you. Last question, probably the most important. Will the Bulldogs be ranked number 1 preseason?
That's not even that's a rhetorical question. That's what kind of question that is. So how do you think this internship has influenced what you do after you leave the finest university in the land?
I think there's a lot to be said that the finest university in the land, unfortunately, can only teach you so much alone. You have 4 years of being in classrooms, but unfortunately, classrooms aren't real life all of the time. One thing we've been saying throughout all summer is that internships are just an extension of your education. I think one thing I'm going to be taking away is just what real life government work can look like. It's not a desk job. We have been moving around every single day. We were here for, I believe, 29 days, 29 full 9-to-5 days, and maybe 1 or 2 of those we spent at City Hall the entire day. All of the other time, we're running around to parks, to the fire department, to the police department. We're doing police ride-alongs. We're meeting with community members. We're having these different stakeholder conversations. I think one thing that really taught me from this internship about government is just how diverse it can be. And I don't think any classroom can teach you that.
Thank you all very much. Very much.
Yeah, good stuff. I do just want to say thank you on behalf of all the citizens. Y'all are doing a remarkable job. You did a remarkable job. If you change your major to accounting or finance, give me a call. Okay, appreciate it.
We're trying to take them back first.
I wonder if the mayor can give you a go dogs.
I'll give you a war eagle. How about that?
No.
Yeah. We'd love to take a picture with all of y'all down there. Okay, appreciate it.
I'm going to sneak down there.
Thank you for everything. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for everything.
Sometime
Are you ready? 3, 2. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
That could be a little intimidating, huh?
Okay, will the city clerk please stay on the next item?
Mayor, our next reports and presentation item is the fiscal year 2026 budget discussion and feedback. Our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Our budget process officially kicked off earlier this year, and staff has been working with the city manager to prepare forecasts for continuing operations, as well as detailed requests for new initiatives. Over the past 2 years, Council has provided prioritization timelines and feedback on topics including sustainability, public art, land use, transportation and mobility, and parks and recreation, as well as existing major capital projects. This feedback has been incorporated into our budget forecast work, and tonight we are here to kick off meeting number 2 of this year's budget process input meetings for staff to ensure we are in full alignment with council feedback and to provide council with an opportunity to see the budget in preparation for the millage rate process. We started our public hearing series for the millage rate this morning, and we will have public hearing number 2 later this evening, and the third and final hearing will take place during the August 11th special called meeting. Here you can see our agenda for tonight's meeting. We will go over the main objectives for the budget discussion meetings, as well as a timeline for the budget process, including that process to set the millage rate. We will then present an overview of the 5-year operating forecast, including revenue anticipations and expenditure projections through fiscal year 2030. And we will then have time for any additional feedback council would like to provide to staff. The overall objective of these budget discussion meetings is to connect with council on the budget forecast and requests that our team has put together with our city manager. These meetings allow us to break up the conversation into smaller segments and receive council and public feedback as we approach the millage rate hearings and the budget workshop, where we will present the proposed budget in its entirety. On this slide, you can see the anticipated timeline for our additional budget meetings and millage rate hearings. On July 21st, our team presented new operating initiatives and capital requests for fiscal year 2026. We also reviewed any changes to the CIP pay-as-you-go program for continuing projects. This morning, we held a special called meeting at 9 a.m., which included the first presentation of the millage rate ordinance, as well as the first of 3 public hearings. Tonight, staff will present the second public hearing on the millage rate, as well as an overview of the 5-year forecast for revenues and expenditures. And on that August 11th work session, we will have the budget workshop where the proposed budget will be presented, and immediately following the work session, we will have a special called meeting to present the third and final public hearing and adopt the millage rate for calendar year 2025, which will fund fiscal year 2026 activity. In September, we will hold our 2 public hearings on the proposed budget, and final adoption will take place on September 15th, 2025. Before you use a summary by category of the general fund revenue anticipations for fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2030. Year-over-year collection variances average about 3%, with the lower end of 2.4% and the higher end of 3.5% in given years. All years support a balanced budget, including maintaining the required fund balance reserves of 25% of the subsequent year's revenues. Revenue forecasts are based on a combination of historic trend analysis and economic condition forecasts. We'll now go over some of the assumptions specific to our larger revenue sources. Here you can see the forecast by revenue source. I'm going to make this a little larger. Nope, that's not. Hold on, not my right presentation. Here you can see. Give me a second. I would like you to be able to see the details that we put together. My incorrect presentation is here this evening, but I have a detailed presentation that I can include in the packet for everyone's access, but I'll continue reading and you'll just see the summarized forecast instead of the detailed line items. I apologize about that. Current year real personal motor vehicle taxes in fiscal year 2026 are based on the advertised millage rate of 4.193 mils. Fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2030 projections support a balancing of the budget with the final millage rate, and that will be projected each year based on the updates to expenditures and other revenue sources, along with the availability of that year's digest. Title ad valorem tax, or TAVT, revenues are based on vehicle sales. The instability of vehicle pricing, along with consumer spending in this category, has yielded an inconsistent trend, with collections increasing by 10% in one year and then decreasing by 1% So our forecast is based on an assumption of values beginning to stabilize in the used car market and interest rate favorability leading to loan affordability later in fiscal year 2025 and into 2026, with an approximate 5% growth in 2026 from the amended 25 budget, and then a 3% growth rate throughout 2030. Local option sales taxes are Milton's second largest revenue source. This is based on purchases made throughout Fulton County, and our forecast does not anticipate significant changes in overall consumer spending throughout the 5-year timeline. Potential interest rate changes could impact this and will be before council with an amendment should this materially change the collections forecast based on recent data. We have forecasted a 2.6% increase in fiscal year 26, increasing to 3.5% subsequently. Insurance premiums are a significant source for funding for Milton. The state distributes these funds at the end of our fiscal year, so actual trend data is a year in arrears. We have updated the fiscal year 26 collection to be 5%, more than we anticipated in FY25 based on recent collection data, followed by the same forecast we had for 27 through 29 in last year's 5-year projections, which yield a 2% increase in FY27 and 4% subsequently through FY30. Land disturbance and building permit revenues are projected to increase slightly in 26 and 27 respectively based on developer interest in the Deerfield implementation plan. Once official applications have been received by staff, we will continue to amend that forecast accordingly. Investment income collections reflect interest rates decreasing slightly in FY26 and 27, along with the assumption that we will have fewer idle dollars on hand to invest once construction on Fire Station 45 and the active park in Deerfield are underway. Please note this 5-year forecast has construction occurring throughout fiscal year 2026 and the staffing and operating costs beginning in fiscal year 2027. That wraps up the discussion on the larger revenue source changes, and we'll now move on to the expenditure forecast. Here you can see the 5-year forecasted expenditure budget by department. Our team has projected out costs through fiscal year 2030 using historic trend as well as taking escalators and current contracts and projections needed into consideration. Our overall expenditure variances year over year, including continuing operations and interfund transfers, are forecasted to grow by an average of 2.9%, with a low of 2.2% and a high of 3.5%. The city manager department has expenses such as National Community Survey, which only occur every other year, so you will see fluctuations over the 5-year plan in that manner. Within the legal department, we are expecting fees to moderate over the 5-year projection. You will see increases in fiscal year 2027 for fire and parks and recreation as we anticipate the opening of the first-year operating cost for Fire Station 45 and the new active athletic park on Deerfield Parkway. This expenditure forecast includes a 1% contingency in the operating fund as required by law, the impact of the current maintenance and operating initiatives over the coming 5 years, as well as the forecasted interfund transfers, which include a transfer out to the city events fund, which will go along with the hotel motel tax revenues to fund those events sponsored or co-sponsored by Milton, which range from $104,000 in fiscal year 2026 to $210,000 in fiscal year 2030. There's also a transfer out to the Revenue Bond Fund to cover debt service due on the revenue bond in the amount of $1.65 million annually. And the largest portion of this category is the PAYGO transfer to the Capital Projects Fund that we looked at in detail at the July 21st meeting. When looking at this at a category instead of a department lens, you will see the salary projections and the benefit projections. And our salary projections are based on an average changes seen within the Employment Cost Index, included in a forecast of 4.5% annually, which will be adjusted in even fiscal years based on the actual reporting from the Department of the Bureau of Labor in the March reporting. And in the odd fiscal years, market adjustments will be presented based on a compensation study headed by our Human Resources Department. No guarantees in market adjustments or benefit changes are made in this forecast, and final decisions will be based on council guidance in each fiscal year. We also have a 4.5% placeholder for benefits based on the trends we've been seeing historically to our medical, dental, vision, and life and disability costs. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will get you that updated presentation. I apologize.
All good. Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions for Bernadette on around the budget? Questions? No? Thank you, Bernadette. Always good. Thank you.
Always great.
Okay. We will now move on to the first presentation. Will City Clerk please sound the item?
Mayor, that first presentation item is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Milton modifying Chapter 4 of the Code of the City of Milton to amend the dates related to license renewals, eliminate the limited food service restaurant license, and amend the hours of sales for microbreweries and microdistilleries. It's agenda item number 25206.
Okay, may I have a motion on the first presentation items?
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve agenda item number 25-206.
Second. Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Cookerly and a second from Councilmember Haney to approve the first presentation items. Please place your votes.
One more time.
Third time.
You vote in favor of it?
Yay.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Okay, we will now, let's see, we'll now go on to the public hearing. Will City Clerk please sound the item?
Mayor, that item is consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to establish the ad valorem tax rate of the City of Milton for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes. The first presentation and first public hearing were at this morning's special called meeting, and tonight is the second public hearing. It is agenda item number 25198. Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. We will have the same presentation this evening that we had this morning. So we are here to discuss setting the 2025 millage rate, which will fund fiscal year 2026 activity. This is the second of our 3 required public hearings, and we'll go into the details of those requirements a little later in the presentation. Here we have the agenda for tonight's public hearing. We will go over some of the important definitions, followed by the state's requirements for public hearings and advertisements regarding setting a millage rate. Next, we will discuss millage rate options. Please keep in mind, council can approve any millage rate up to the legal cap of 4.731 mils. Staff has advertised a millage rate of 4.193 mils, which supports a proposed balanced budget that we just went over a little bit of details a moment ago. If council wishes to adopt a rate above 4.193 mils, that will require additional advertisements and hearings per state law. We will review a metrics comparison related to average revenue collections, expenditures, and debt for Milton and our surrounding North Fulton neighbors, which was an objective under the Ensure Milton's long-term financial sustainability goal in our current strategic plan that we've been tracking for the last few years. Following the millage rate overview, we will break down the digest by category and show the taxes that would be levied at the current millage rate, the advertised millage rate, and the rollback millage rate, followed up by a review of the financial the revenues each would yield. Following the metrics comparison, we will go over the revenue collection forecast and a snapshot of the budget summary, including the pay-go transfers associated with the CIP program. And after that, we will look at some ways property owners can reduce their tax liability and how to calculate a tax bill, as well as the value of your tax dollars as a Milton taxpayer. Here we have some important definitions. A mill is $1 per $1,000 of assessed property value, or 0.001 times that assessed value. The fair market value is an estimate of the market value of your property as determined by the Fulton County Board of Assessors. The assessed or taxable value is the 40% of the fair market value. Property taxes are calculated by multiplying that millage rate by the assessed or taxable value, which has been adjusted for any exemptions that you may have. The rollback rate, which we will discuss, is the previous year's millage rate minus the millage equivalent to the total net assessed value added by reassessments. And the millage equivalent is the equation where the reassessment of existing real property is divided by the current year's net digest and then multiplied by the prior year's millage rate. We have that math spelled out in the next few slides that you'll see here in a moment. But first, we'll go over the requirements for public hearings. Anytime the city's advertised millage rate exceeds the computed rollback rate, we must hold 3 public hearings to allow for citizen input. Since Milton advertised at the advertised millage rate of 4.193 mils, that will be reviewed this evening and requires these 3 hearings. So we will have this morning's meeting at 9 a.m., this evening's meeting at 6 p.m., and we'll have the third and final on August 11th, followed by the vote in the special called meeting. Here you can see the first advertisement that we put in the paper. It's called the Notice of Property Tax Increase. This ad is required if the advertised millage rate exceeds the rollback rate. The second ad we put in the paper is the 5-year history of levy, and this ad is required regardless of the millage rate being set. This has to be put in the paper every year to show every year-over-year changes in the levy when collecting 100% of the taxes. You'll see later in our forecast that we typically do not collect 100% in year one. We're closer to about 97% for real property, 65% for personal property, and about, I think it's 50% on the motor vehicle. We'll see that here in a moment. Here you can see the year-over-year changes in our digest as prepared by Fulton County. On the left-hand side, you can see the 2024 digest, followed by the breakdown of the changes in reassessment of existing real property, then any additions outside of that, which may be new construction or improvements made to the properties. And then you have the 2025 total digest there on the far right. Those are the numbers that are used in the math for the ads that we went over. Here you can see the exact math. I won't go over the details of this, but you can go through this at your leisure if you'd like. This is step-by-step how you calculate that 6.88% that is advertised in the notice of tax increase ad, and that 8.8% that's advertised in the 5-year history of levy change. The next few slides will go over the millage rate scenarios, including the current millage rate of 4.389 mils, the advertised millage rate of 4.193, and the calculated rollback rate of 3.923, which would offset any increase that resulted from the reassessment of existing real property. Again, please keep in mind, council can approve any millage rate up to that capped millage rate, but we would need to have additional hearings if you're going to choose a millage rate above 4.193 mils. On this slide, you will also see the adopted millage rates back to incorporation, and at the bottom of the slide, you will see the separately calculated green space bond millage rate. This is the variable rate used to allow for property tax collections for debt service payments on the bond, including principal and interest due in fiscal year 2026. This rate is in addition to the maintenance and operating rate and is not included in the legal cap of 4.731 mils. For reference, the bond millage rate last year was 0.356 and 3.36 for the year before. As you may recall, the basic and floating exemptions do not apply to the bond millage rate, but all other city-provided exemptions now apply to both millage rates after the exemption modifications that were approved by council a few years ago. And they were also approved by the voters in the referendum. Based on the current digest figures, we have forecasted a bond millage rate of 0.310 mils to cover the debt service due in fiscal year 2026. As the digest values fluctuate, so will that millage rate to cover the debt service due. Before we go on to the details of the budget, I would like to quickly go over our annual updates to the financial metrics comparison. This comparison was one of our objectives included in the strategic plan, and it helps us understand how our government is doing compared to surrounding jurisdictions. When looking at the per capita data, it is important to recall that Milton has an intentionally reduced density and a smaller commercial footprint. You can see here on the first table that Milton has the second lowest, I believe I misspoke this morning and said second highest, but the second lowest average revenues per capita. But when looking at actual revenues collected, we are the lowest out of the 5 compared cities here. Going down to the third table, you can see the average levy per millage rate over the last 7 fiscal years. And with a similar average millage rate of about 4.60 and 4.62, you can see that Roswell's makeup of their digest is able to bring in almost double the revenues that Milton's is at that similar millage rate. For reference, you can see last year's millage rates at the bottom. They will be represented in the fiscal year 2025 data. Moving on to expenditures, you see a similar story. When looking at a per capita basis, Milton has the second lowest spending, but when you look at actual spending, Milton is the lowest out of the 5 cities. Again, we have the smallest population, so that inflates that per capita number a little bit there. In the third graph, you can see how each jurisdiction is spending their money. And for the majority of the cities, the first 2 categories are the most popular being public safety and then followed by general government. Then when coming in third place, Roswell has culture and recreation, and the rest of the remaining cities have public works as the function in which they're spending their funds. When looking at debt, we can see that Milton at a per capita level has the third highest or third lowest debt, and then when looking at actual debt issued, we have the lowest. Happy to answer any questions you might have about that metrics comparison. We will move on to our general fund revenue anticipations. On the left side of the screen, you can see the original fiscal year 2026 revenue forecasts that were projected this time last year Our team prepared the proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 and as discussed has advertised a millage rate of 4.193 mils. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the taxes that would be levied under the current millage rate, that advertised millage rate, as well as the rollback millage rate for real, personal, and motor vehicle. And I am corrected that motor vehicle is now around 70% of collections, not 50. That was a few years ago. It's increased in their forecast. So we take that digest data we showed you earlier, we plug that into the formula for the millage rate, and then we project that out for year one collections, and these are the revenues. And you can see in the detailed revenue forecast that I'll be providing to you at the 11th meeting that these exact numbers are the ones that are represented under current year real property, current year personal property, and motor vehicle taxes. The current year millage rate would yield anticipated revenues 11.88% or $1.9 million higher than the rollback millage rate of 3.923 mils. And the advertised millage rate would yield 6.88% or 1.1 million more than the rollback rate, which was what was in the advertisement of that notice of increase. Just to point out again, that's a revenue collection increase, not a personal individual tax bill increase. Again, a snapshot of our budget fund summary. We just went over that in a little more detail, showing the 5-year forecast. This goes backwards a little bit and shows you actuals for 23 and 24, as well as the amended budget for 25, the proposed budget for 26, and then those variances by dollar and percent between the amended 25 and 26. We will go over this in extensive detail on the 11th, where we'll talk about what is causing those variances or driving those variances. Here you can see a snapshot of the revenue details, and again, you can see right here that 17.5 million, that 197,291, and 18,879 from the previous slide that shows the revenue forecasts based on a 4.193 millage rate. Here's the snapshot of our 2026 PAYGO requests. We went over those in detail on the July 21st meeting. Just have it here for reference so you can see these are the funds that would come out of the operating transfer that is provided by those revenue collections in the general fund. So next, we'd like to take some time to talk about opportunities for tax savings. As Milton's digest is primarily residential, the city recognizes several exemptions in order to reduce the tax liability for qualifying property owners. There's the basic homestead exemption, 2 exemptions available to our senior population, including a full value option and a full value exemption for those with permanent disabilities. Our 65 plus exemption is $25,000, which will apply to both the maintenance and operating and bond taxes. And additionally, the threshold for the full value exemption is now $100,000 versus the Social Security threshold, which was at $91,728 for 2024. We also have the floating homestead exemption, which applies to the primary residence in 5 contiguous acres of land. This is the question we receive, or this is the exemption we receive the most questions about, and it seems to create the most confusion. So we're going to take a moment and kind of talk about exactly how you calculate that floating homestead exemption, and then how you use that to calculate your taxes due. I have a case study, you might call it, of someone who called in and had a question with us, and we went through a lot of detail with them. So I've used their example to show you what that looks like over the years. So that formula is your assessed or taxable value. You might see it called assessed or taxable depending upon which document you're looking at. You reduce that by your adjusted base value. That value is not available to you. You have to contact Fulton County or the City of Milton to get that. That is one of the things we're going to show you in a moment, cause a little bit of confusion. But that assessed minus that adjusted equals your floating homestead exemption, which you take to in addition to your other exemptions that you're eligible for. So here's a copy of that assessment notice that everyone receives earlier in the year. 2 things to note is that Fulton County does not retain parcel level exemption data for City of Milton residents. So on their tax assessment notices, they'll see their exemptions for the county portion of the bill, but they will not see their exemptions for the city portion of the bill. They also will not see, like we mentioned, that adjusted base year value. So those are 2 important key pieces of information to be able to understand your taxes that are not available to you on your notice. The notice is really to just make sure that that fair market value seems like a fair value to you and to have some kind of understanding about what's coming for the coming year. So here are the step-by-step directions on how to calculate that floating homestead exemption. The first thing you need to do is you need to be able to calculate your assessed or taxable value. That's the green figure you're going to get there, and that's the first piece of data within our formula of calculating our floating homestead exemptions. You take your fair market value in each given year, multiply that by 40%, and you get your assessed taxable value. That number will never change off of that 40% calculation. That is by state law, and no matter what your fair market value fluctuates as, that assessed value will be 40%. The next step is to calculate your adjusted base value. Again, this is data that is not readily available to you in any of the documents you receive, but you can get it from the county or the city. We can only provide the city portion, but the county has both. So if you want to make one phone call, they can probably give you both of those. This example that we pulled from our resident that called had a 2016 base year. So that means in 2019 tax year, the first year that Milton applied the floating homestead exemption, their 2016 assessed value was multiplied by 1.0423, which was the calculation provided in the House bill to set some kind of growth from that year to the 2019 year. And you can see that's year one here. Every subsequent year has been multiplied by the CPI or 3%, whichever was lower. This is Milton's 1.8, 1.2, 3% for 3 years, and this year's 2.9. This yellow figure is the figure that cannot exceed 3%. It's the only figure that cannot exceed 3%. So you're not going to see that again on your assessment notice. You're not going to see that on your tax bill. So that is important data for you to be able to receive to make sure that that calculation is going. Again, this example includes a property that has their entire value within the floating homestead exemption. So they're going to be 5 acres or lower, and they've had no improvements or anything like that. There are other circumstances that become very unique to each individual property that they have to consider. So if you've built on a basement, or you've added an addition to your home, or you've built an outer building, or you have more than 5 acres of land, those values fall outside of this exemption and will be taxed at the current rate.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Has there been any discussion with Fulton County to add that adjusted base value on the tax bills?
That was a question asked in the recent town hall, actually, and they just mentioned that it wasn't required by state law. I don't know that, not that it couldn't be. It's something we're trying to look into, see if there's an ability. We only have hours. And as of right now, we have through 2024, which has been released to us. We have some projections for 2025, but we don't have the final data till we get the digest towards the end of September. But we are trying to look at to see if there's a way that our system can pull in ours, but that
It causes
is,
a lot of work every year.
I know,
you
I know,
know?
but I know.
Yeah.
I think they're doing the best they can. And like they said, they you can call and they're happy to give it to you. It wasn't something that's, it did seem like very difficult for them to address if you do call them. So the third part of our first calculation, we have that green number, which is our assessed taxable value. We just calculated our base value. When you take the green minus the yellow, you get your floating homestead exemption. This is the number that's very, very important. You can see that this particular property went from a $15,000 exemption up to a $350,000 exemption down to $327,000. It changes based on what that base year value is happening and what's happening with your assessed value. So again, call ahead, we can walk you through that, but that is how to get that key floating homestead exemption. So now moving on to our second set is how you actually calculate the taxes you owe. So now that you have your assessed taxable value and you have your floating homestead exemption, you'll add your floating homestead exemption to any other exemptions you are eligible for. In this case, they have the basic of $15,000, and in 2023, they got the one-time HTRG, which is the homeowner's tax relief grant, $18,000. And you take those numbers and you reduce that and you get your net assessed taxable value. That's the number in pink. You take your pink number times your millage rate, you get your taxes owed. So you can see over the course of the last few years in Milton, this is exactly what this taxpayer paid in maintenance and operating taxes. We did not include the bond taxes in this example, just to kind of show it a little more clearly with the floating homestead exemption and how that impacts that, because the floating homestead exemption does not apply to the bond millage rate. Any questions about that? And hopefully our taxpayers can take this math and be able to apply that to theirs if they get that value from the county. In addition to the homestead exemptions, there's also the CUVA, which is the Conservation Use Value Assessment. If you qualify, your property value will be based on your land use and not that fair market value number. So that is a significant source of savings for many properties within Milton. Fulton County confirmed that they're requiring a minimum of 10 acres and then there's a maximum of 2,000 acres, and the owner must agree to maintain the property in a bona fide qualifying use period for a period of 10 years. So another opportunity for our taxpayers. And then in this example, I just wanted to show with the 3 millage rates we've been discussing what taxes could look like with a fair market value of $900,000 and just the basic homestead exemption of $15,000, excluding the floating because it's so unique to each individual property. Just wanted to kind of show a snapshot of what it would look like if you only had the $15,000 exemption. So again, you take your 40%, you reduce it by any exemptions you're eligible for, and you get your subtotal, which is your net assessed value, and you multiply that by your millage rate. So anyone who has floating homestead exemptions would just add that into this line here, and they would further reduce their tax liability here. And you can see the difference between those 3 millage rates that we are proposing in this evening's presentation, but council can adopt any millage rate they so choose, up to 4.731 mils. Then the value of that tax dollar, when you take that 4.193 mils for that $900,000 property that only has the basic homestead exemption, they're going to pay $1,446.59 a year, which breaks down to $120.55 a month, or $3.96 a day for all these city services. And those are broken out by our current forecasted budget, so you can see by function where those dollars would go. And here it is with each individual millage rate that we've been speaking about. And you can see about 42% goes to public safety, 18% to our PAYGO program, followed by our government body and administration at 16%. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and we will have the third hearing on the 11th and then adopt a millage rate.
Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions?
Bernadette, I got a question on the homestead exemption. Are there residents that may qualify for it but are not taking advantage of it? Is that
Yes,
possible?
That is definitely possible. What we do is every year, we have these hearings. We also, before the millage rate goes out, Greg's team does an excellent job of helping us out. We push out social media. We actually put an ad in the paper. We've done everything we can think of. We're happy to do more if you can think of them to share with us. We have a new video out this year that tried to explain some of the assessment notice information before the assessment notices came out. We pushed that out. But I am sure that each year we do find out people that probably could have and didn't.
I was going to say, and some of our front counter personnel also, whenever they recognize that the person does not have homestead exemption, they'll ask, and they'll give me information then.
Good. Yeah, the extent we can do more outreach and inform them, right? So it's glad to hear you guys are making that effort. On slide 16, Bernadette, you had percentages listed. I'm trying to reconcile what those meant.
I'll go back, slide 16.
Yeah. The real estate was 97.
Oh, yes, this is that, okay, so if we go back a few slides to that formula for the notice of property tax increase.
Mm-hmm.
So this math, it's doing this math for you and showing the change if you had the 4.193 mils versus the rollback rate of 3.923 divided by that, so net change. And then you get 6.88%. And I did the same math using 4.389 if we had stayed with our current millage rate. So now going back to 16, you can see if we would have stayed with our current millage rate, that I would have said 11.88%. At the 4.193 mils at 6.88%. That is targeting the reassessment piece of the tax increase.
But the millage rate percentage is up above the real estate, personal, and motor vehicle.
These percentages.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I go off? I'm just answering something you didn't ask.
That's okay. I was tracking
okay.
with you though.
No problem. So we look at our actual collection. So what I do each year is I take this PT 32.1 data. This is the digest data that comes from the county. And that's this forecast. Just trying to make sure we're on the same page here. Right here. And I compare it to what we actually were able to collect. So historically, over the last few years, we've been able to collect around 97% of the forecast for real property, 65% for personal property, and now motor vehicles up to 70. It was 50 for a couple of years. I think the last two, it's been 70. So we use that as a barometer by which to forecast the collections in year one. So you might have people that pay late or have the other thing is appeals weren't even due at the time we had this data. So by the time all the appeals are in, that number does fluctuate. So that data is a snapshot in time back in, a little while ago. And so then by the time we actually get the digest and throughout the year amendments are made to it, this is about what we collect in year one.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Bernadette? Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay. I will close the public hearing and we will now move on to the zoning agenda. Will the city clerk please read the zoning rules and then sound the first item?
Thank you, Mayor. When the mayor and council consider a zoning agenda, these items include rezoning petitions, modifications of zoning, use permits, and associated concurrent variances, in addition to ordinances, resolutions, and text amendments. The applicant and all those speaking in support of application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The opposition will also be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. All speakers will identify themselves with name, address, and organization before beginning their presentation. The Planning Commission has heard the rezoning agenda items, and their recommendations have been forwarded to the mayor and council for consideration and disposition. The applicant shall not submit material to the council during this meeting unless requested to do so. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the council in consideration of your application should have already been submitted to the Community Development Department and is in the normal distribution of packages to the council. Please note, when an opponent of a rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being proposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Our first zoning agenda this evening is the consideration of U-2502 at 14505 Batesville Road by LRF Milton LLC to request a use permit for a rural event facility. It's section 8.7.1.H of the UDC on 35.87 acres, reduction from previously approved U-1402 and ZM 1701 within a 6,539 square foot house, a 4,296 square foot atrium structure, a 4,760 square foot existing building, and 2 gazebos for a maximum of 250 attendees. It is agenda item number 25192. Our zoning manager, Robin McDonald.
Showing, okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So as the city clerk outlined, that we're going to talk about U-25-02, 14505 Batesville Road. It is the existing Little Farms Rural Event Facility and a existing bed and breakfast, not in operation. The zoning is AG1. It is located within the Rural Milton Overlay District. And the future land use designation is AEE, Agricultural, Equestrian, Estate, Residential. The summary of the request is to reduce the current area of the event facility from 47.7 acres to 35.87 acres. So if you'll bear with me, if you look at this diagram here, the original previous area of the 47.7 acres is in the green. So you start to the north and come down south to an apex here, and then along Batesville Road, and then along the Little River. So that was the original 47 plus acres. Tonight, they are requesting to amend the area and to delete this light green portion. And now we're only looking at the hatched area, the gray area. So it does include what was a part of it, the main area as in where they did the actual weddings and parking. And then they're adding this little triangle here that abuts to Taylor Road. So just to give you some perspective here. The applicant is requesting to keep the existing conditions of the use permit from 2014, which includes hours of operation, number of attendees, maximum sound permitted, and number and size of buildings. So for all intents and purposes, it's the same use, it's the same number of attendees, the same hours, etc. In regards to compliance of the development, it meets the rural event facility standards as outlined in section 8.7.1H. It also meets the rural Milton overlay district standards for agricultural type uses, which is what a rural event facility falls under. So again, we have the site plan and the area highlighted in green, which is the new request. So just to give you a little perspective here, I know it's a little messy and hard to see, but this is the main, so this is the main house, and then there's an adjacent pavilion. So those are kind of the main areas, and then there's a smaller barn right here that has other smaller activities in it, events, okay? In regards to public involvement at the CZIM meeting held on May 27th, the applicant and representatives were present. 8 members of the public attended. There were 3 residents from Valmont subdivision, which is located on the other side of Taylor Road. And they had no issues with the event facility in the past since it's been operating. Half of the attendees lived in the newly constructed Little River Farm subdivision. I'll go to a map that'll show where that is. And 2 people lived adjacent to the 16.5 acres that are being requested to be deleted from the use permit. And they live in Taylor Glen, which is an established older neighborhood. These residents were concerned with the following: what will be developed on the 16.5 acres in the future? The applicant does not know what exactly might be developed, but provided the following potential site plan just as a reference. Another issue was construction traffic noise that may occur through the existing Little River Farms subdivision. That is, if the 16.5 acres are developed with another subdivision. Right now, it's just a big field. So this is the 16.5 acres, and we're just pointing this out because it came up in the discussions. This is a potential scenario. Nothing is guaranteed, but the applicant did show that they could have 5 large lots, i.e. they're 3 acres or larger, which would only require a minor plat, and they would access through the existing Little River Farms newer subdivision. In regards to the public participation plan, the applicant held their required meeting on June 13th here at Community Place at City Hall. And there was no one who came to that meeting, but they also submitted the required paperwork to the department on June 16th. In addition, the applicant's representative did reach out to 2 residents of Little River Farm subdivision who were at the CZI meeting to provide information via email. At the Design Review Board, they unanimously recommended to send a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for the request. At the City of Milton Planning Commission meeting on June 25th, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval as presented by staff with the following proposed change to the recommended conditions to include, quote, as measured from the property line, unquote, for every condition regarding noise control. These amended conditions are reflected in the recommended conditions for your review. In regard to notification, because it's adjacent to Cherokee County, we sent the information to the Cherokee County Community Development Department, and they had no comments on it. In addition, we sent approximately 40 letters to owners in Cherokee County, And based on the information from the applicant, there was one resident at the DRB meeting but did not speak. In regards to standards of review for the use permit, the requested revised use permit is consistent or meets the criteria of the 10 considerations when requesting a use permit for the rural event facility. In addition, the operations of the facility is unchanged from the previously approved use permit from 2014. In conclusion, the proposed reduction of area from 47.7 acres to 35.87 acres with the same conditions of zoning as granted pursuant to U 1402 for a rural event facility is consistent with the 2040 future land use plan, and it meets development standards for both the use permit and the rural Milton overlay district. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditional of U 2502. In addition, staff recommends rescission of U 1401 for the use permit for bed and breakfast because it's no longer in use, and for U 1402 for the rural event facility, which will be voted on in the next two agenda items. So I will cover the recommended conditions just as a refresher. These are the same recommended conditions that were approved back in 2014 and the amended zoning mod, I believe, in 2018, except for there will be one item. It'll be highlighted in red. But it is to the owner's agreement to restrict the use to the rural event facility. The number of attendees shall not exceed 250 people for any single event. The hours of operation shall be the following: Friday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Music ends no later than 11 p.m. Maximum 45 dBA measured at the property line. This is a different, this is added versus what had been approved previously. 1 hour prior to music ending, alcohol ceases service 15 minutes before music ending. Facility closes at midnight. And again, Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. with the same requirement, and then closing at 11 p.m. Amplified sound of music shall be located within the enclosed portion of the atrium. All deliveries shall enter off of Batesville Road, and portable toilets, when used, shall not be viewed from Batesville Road and Taylor. And then barn facility location, Friday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Music ends no later than 10 p.m. Maximum dBA measured at the property line 1 hour prior to music ending. Alcohol ceases service 15 minutes before music ending, and the facility closes at 11. Amplified music shall be located within the barn. And then it conditions it to the new site plan submitted on May 5th, 2025. And to the owner's agreement to the site development conditions are the 10,536 square foot structure, a 4,296 square foot atrium, and all other buildings shall not be expanded in size as depicted in the revised site plan. And then the location and number of parking spaces shall be as depicted on the revised site plan. All events with more than 75 attendees shall be required to have valet service and provide a minimum of one off-duty police officer for such events. Okay, and so those are the conclusion of the conditions. And so with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions before we call the applicant?
Yeah, I have
Councilman
one
Haney?
question. So, Robin, you had on your slide that showed DRB and Planning Commission, no one showed up at the DRB meeting with any comments. Did anyone show up at Planning Commission either? You remember?
No, they did not.
So there's no opposition at either
No.
one of those meetings? Okay.
I have a question. I'm measuring sound. Two questions. Why the language that the maximum 45 dBA measured at the property line 1 hour prior to music ending? Why is that a stipulation? Why couldn't it be earlier? Like, if in fact there was an infraction, and they've done a wonderful job not having infractions, but if anyone had an infraction that was in this business, does that mean somebody would have to tolerate it all night? But then if they lowered it an hour before, I don't understand that.
Well, I think that they were trying to, the original 2014 use permit, all of this was what was approved except for the red. So that was just what the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council at the time agreed
Okay,
upon.
But all right, so let me ask a question a different way. Does the 1 hour, measuring 1 hour prior to music ending, does that supersede if that decibel level is within bounds, but the prior 3 hours was out of bounds?
I see what
Is that the hour that matters? This makes no sense to me. Why couldn't it be at any point that it goes over, it's measurable, and that's an infraction?
Ken?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Robin's probably going to know the history better than me, but I would submit to you that if it's confusing the least bit to one of you, it's probably going to be confusing to someone attempting to abide by it or enforce it. So
I think it should be struck. I mean, it
obviously
just-
Robin's right. It's the red language that's being changed, but whenever you're modifying a condition, even if it's something that was the product of another zoning enactment, the whole condition is subject to your approval. So if you wanted to strike the language at the end of the red, the language in black text, you have every right to do that. And that would candidly make the condition probably a little more clear from an enforcement.
I mean, it's just, if it exceeds that. And then the question is, there are many property lines. Whose are we talking about?
Okay, so let me go back to the site plan. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so here are the new property lines. And so basically, if a sound meter was used the way that it's being proposed, as the Planning Commission recommended in red, was that anywhere along these green lines, if it exceeds I believe 45 dBA, then they would be they would be non-compliant. Now, understand why I emphasize that all the noise and amplification is supposed to be inside both of those buildings, whether it's the little barn or whether it's the pavilion. So 45 is very, very low. I'm sure I'm speaking higher than what 45 is.
Right.
But at the same time, they are not permitted to have amplified sound outside of those two buildings.
Okay, but is that Little River's property line, or is that somebody's property line?
Right,
across
it's
the street?
this would be this, once, if this is approved and they end up selling the adjacent property to the north, then it is all of these property lines, along the adjacent right-of-way of Batesville and Taylor Road, and then to the subdivision. This is called the Little River Farm subdivision. It's a fairly new development. And then to the north, and then to the west is the Little River.
Robin, wouldn't it be easier just to say if they exceed the 45 on any of their property lines at any time during the event? Wouldn't that make it a lot easier to understand?
I think the city attorney was suggesting that if they just knocked out that last sentence and then at the property lines. And I believe if that's what you all want is to be measured at the property line, it's the property line of the subject site.
Okay, I just wanted to be consistent with everything that we said about Matilda's and all that kind of stuff, but maybe we'll hear from you all too, and thank you very much.
One second. Hey, question, Robin. How was it measured over the last 11 years? Was it measured at the property line or was it measured somewhere else?
So it was silent. It did not say where, but the current noise ordinance, which at the time this was approved, I don't think it was the current noise ordinance because it was so long ago. But currently, the noise ordinance says for this type of sound to be measured at the nearest residentially used property. Okay, so that's a little even more confusing, right? So let's say if you did it that way, Right now, there are no houses here, but at the time there might be some residential houses, then it would be at this line. And currently it's at this line and this line. And technically, it would be across the right-of-way on Taylor Road right here. So that's another 60, 70 feet. And then it would be on the other side of Batesville, wherever there might be some residentially used property.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. I don't think that the measuring opportunity should migrate to anybody's backyard, their front door. I mean.
So I have pulled other things, other use permits that have been approved, if that's something you want to hear at some point.
Okay.
Any other questions before we have the applicant up?
Thank you, Robin.
Okay.
Very much.
Please call the applicant.
Scott Reese, I invite you to the podium.
Do we have any opposition?
We do not.
Okay.
Not in public comment.
Okay. Okay.
Mayor and Council, I'm Scott Reese from Brumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I'm here tonight representing the Ivy family and their application for a use permit for a rural event facility located at the corner of Batesville and Taylor Road. This is a modification for an existing use permit that's been in operation since 2014 and was amended in 2017. The reason we're here is we are reconfiguring the legal description of the property. So that requires a new use permit. So Ms. McDonald did an exceptional job of going through the technical parts of the use permit, and there's no reason for me to rehash that. Any technical questions or anything you have, you can ask me and we'll try to answer those. Why I'm here is to say why we're here. And the Ivy family has owned this property for over 70 years. Originally, it was a 500-acre farm. It has been one of the largest dairies in North Fulton County. It's been a hog farm. It's been an egg farm. It's been a beef cattle operation. It's now a golf course, residential subdivisions, and a rural event facility. So the one thing you note there is it adapted and changed. And we're here again because there are multiple heirs, two of which are elderly, one who is disabled, and they have petitioned the trustees for additional income. So to meet their requirements, we had to come up with a plan. And it was either sell all of the property or a portion of the property. It is their great desire to maintain a portion of this property, and the homestead, this original 35 acres around the old house and the iconic Little River Farms water tower, as you see on your screen. It's kind of one of the last remaining vestiges of my youth in Milton. So that being said, the primary thing I think to remember in this is what they're proposing and what they're not proposing. So, that's not the one I want. Well, we're having a little technical difficulties. So
There you go. It just, there's a Zoom, there we go.
So the main thing is the existing use permit has been active for 11 years with zero, as far as we know, code enforcement infractions. The proposed use permit is 7 times the minimum requirements per your UDC. The proposal before you has 0 variances proposed for this use permit. In fact, we are coloring completely inside the lines. We're not asking for anything outside the normal or the requirements thereof. There are no additional structures and 0 additional land disturbance included in this proposed use permit. The operation and management of this facility will stay exactly the same as operations for the last 11 years. So, once again, we have to do something, and we're hoping that you will agree that maintaining this 35 acres with this use permit will be an asset to the city. The applicant has spent a large portion of the last 11 years maintaining this area. And with this use permit, you would have 800 feet along Taylor Road and over 2,000 feet on Batesville Road. The view shed would stay exactly the same. If they would have to sell it, we stand the risk of a 1 acre lot subdivision going in there. So I think you would all agree that maintaining this would be in the best interest of the city of Milton. These rural event facilities, these use permits that allow things beside just a residential subdivision are one of the things that distinguish the city of Milton from city of Alpharetta, Sandy Springs, Johns Creek. Preserving this, I think, would be a great continued asset in the city of Milton. So we are proposing that you approve the proposal as was originally permitted. We see no reason to manipulate beyond the city standard of where the property line or where the measurements are. It's not that confusing. So if a residentially used property at their property line, at their measurement, that is we are about half. I think 85 is the standard, and we're at 45. The code is, there's a chart that goes through and labels everything in there. We would ask that you would keep it as that.
What does that mean?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, did I jump?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, keep going.
Okay, so the chart, this is directly out of your DC code. You'll see for residential and commercial amplified music, and down at the bottom it gives the point of measurement, which is as measured anywhere within the boundary line of the nearest residentially occupied property. We have 2 detention ponds that are adjacent to us, and they are at kind of key areas. And be reminded, this is music that is amplified indoors. So we just see no reason to change the operating procedures that we're under. I mean, it's been operating for 11 years. This case has been, it's been lived. It's not what if, this is what happens in there. same management, same operating procedures. That's all the council, if you would like to add anything to it.
Do we have another speaker?
This is the council.
Okay.
I'm still part of the application.
Okay.
My name is Rich Kay. I'm a partner with the law firm of Pearson and Ferdinand. I reside at 410 Glenridge Close Court in Sandy Springs. The only thing I really want to talk about is the noise and the sound. We've been there for 11 years. We haven't had one complaint. The reason is we're reasonable and we run this thing in a professional way. Statute or the ordinance that Scott was referring to, there's two noise ordinances. One noise ordinance deals with sound and music, whatever, interior of the building. And that is 1174, which permits up to 50 and 55 decibels, measured at the nearest residential property line. Not at our property line, but the nearest residential. Now, if you want to measure at our property line, you go to 1176, which says we can have 85 decibels with outside music, and then you measure it at our property line. That's not what we're asking for. Okay? We're just asking for, and just think about it, if you're going to be imposing that measuring spot, our property line, think about the zoning inspectors, right? How are they going to know that? They're going to look at the code and they're going to say, okay, what does the code say? For interior music, for interior sound, the code says we're going to be measuring.
Mayor, time has expired. We just
Time's
need
expired.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. We'll get into staff with some questions for sure, and we'll ask y'all any questions.
And I also
you have.
submitted a letter with it that explains that. So
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Do we have no opposition?
None.
Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing, and I will ask any council has any questions. If we want to
Well,
ask the Rob. Yeah, go
Can
for
I
it.
just finish?
Yeah.
All right, so I didn't, yeah, Mr. Reese. So the houses that may come along,
Yes.
because I don't really understand the site plan that quickly, are they going to be any closer than any current homes? And here's the genesis of my question, having done a ton of permitting, like, for example, landfills. So you have a landfill, and over time, the land around it is fairly cheap. People move in, and then 10 years later, they're mad it smells occasionally. Okay, so my point is, I don't think it's fair to the operation of the farm if they sell some land and there are some large lots and those people are here and it's measured at the property line. Is that closer than where it has historically been measured?
No.
Okay.
So so you have the area of intense usage, for lack of a better term, where the structures, so there's 35 acres, but there's basically a half acre around the old barn and an acre around the house. That's where the activity
You've
happens.
answered the question. So the bottom line is you just want the same measuring capability you've always had, and everything has worked very well, and everybody's been happy.
We don't want to change the rules. We don't want to make up new rules.
Okay.
But the way it's presented to us changes it because it makes it at the property line as
Yeah,
opposed
it
to the
changes
nearest.
it and changes your standard.
Right.
So we want to go back to the original language, and that's what we could change tonight in approval.
And there was a little bit of confusion about the timing, the way it was way we have interpreted it for 11 years. So the operation could occur till 11 o'clock. The music had to start at 10 o'clock, or stop at 10 o'clock. So it may be a little, the semantics.
we had to lower the sound any more before.
Oh.
Not blaring it at 11 o'clock. That's why
At 10 o'clock, right, that's the music, the noise has to.
Okay, so it's like a separate measurement to see if you actually stop at 10 o'clock.
To
Okay.
accommodate the community.
Okay.
We didn't
Well,
want to be.
We're splicing a lot of hairs here. that I
We're
don't
good.
think
Thank you.
matter.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to clarify something, Mr. Mayor. So the idea that the city does not have, or in some respects can't modify the standard by way of a zoning condition or a use permit condition is not accurate. Of course, you have the right to do that. What you choose to do is completely up to you. If you want to keep the standard at the way it's been for a while with this, do that. It's perfectly appropriate. But I simply want to make sure everybody understands that the whole idea of coming and getting these sort of use permits is for you to some massage conditions that apply to the use that is being prepared. But there's nothing at all that would prevent you from simply saying, we like the measurement that's in the code, and that's what we're going to stand behind. I do think if you're going to do that, you may want to take a look at some additional language on this condition, because right now that is different.
That's what I was going to ask you, is how do we put the language in place that was how they've always operated for 11 years with 0 complaints, and that was the original intent?
Well,
What
the
would
easiest way would be to simply reference the code. It's actually set forth in table 11.7.4A. It's sort of footnote 1, as measured anywhere within the boundary line of the nearest residentially occupied property. I mean, make a specific reference to that. That is infinitely clear.
All right, so what is that again? And I'll do
I'm going
that.
to say it faster, so it's harder for you to
Really
actually.
fast. You're a high aptitude person.
Real
I can do it. Go ahead.
It's table 11.7.4A, and then it's table note 1, which actually says as measured anywhere within the boundary line of the nearest residentially occupied property, which is what I thought was articulated up here is the preference. And if that's the way it's been for years, that may be what you exactly want to default to.
I want to just double check with Robin. Is that exactly the way it's been done over the last 11 years? Is that where we've been measuring it?
As Mr. Reese had stated, there hasn't been any complaints, so I can't really say how it's been measured because we haven't measured it because there hasn't been any complaints.
Okay. So, I mean, I remember I was on planning commission 11 years ago. And I remember this, and
They were
I couldn't
concerned
tell you
about
what the
it.
intent was. So I was just,
They were, the neighbors were definitely concerned about the noise. That's why it was restricted to inside the structure.
That takes care of it.
But,
okay.
yeah.
Got it.
Robin,
Thank
where
you.
do we measure sound for Matilda's, Ebenezer, which we just approved, Painted Horse? Where do we measure there?
So for the recently approved Ebenezer, it states amplified or other sounds shall not register at the property line in excess of blah, blah, blah. And then for Matilda's, it says the maximum noise permitted measured at all the adjacent property lines, which is basically the same. And then we have the agriculture-related activities on Bethany Way, is maximum sound of all music shall not exceed 45 dBA measured at the property lines.
Perfectly consistent.
What they've had historically is actually better for the city. Well, because it's a big piece of property. You know, it says say the exact language, the closest residential, whatever.
I mean, 45 dBA, that.
We just followed the code.
Right, but this is just a small point, but you could, on a large property, you could go to a property line on the very opposite side of the property, measure it, and it's reasonably fine, but it might be louder down here by the residents. So this is better because it's down here by the residents.
Well, I just think it allows them to take advantage of the fact that if you have retention pond, that's the neighboring one, and that's closer to where you're amplifying sound, then who cares?
Yeah,
Or you
it's
get to take
worse.
advantage of the fact that you've got a roadway there. So who cares if you hear it there? It's where if you hear it on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's giving them benefit of the doubt that likely no one's going to be complaining in the middle of the road.
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm very glad there's a solution that's not carving the property up.
45 dBA, that's pretty low. So
Yeah.
the public hearing is closed, sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I would say, especially for Matilda's, and I know it's a different animal because it's outside, but I do see the advantage of at the property line that you can self-regulate. So I think it's a little odd to have to go to somebody else's property line, across the street and kind of hang out there. But obviously that's what the code says, and if that's what you prefer. But I will say it makes it easier for each of those property owners to self-regulate, and make sure that their DBA is not exceeding it. But other than that,
I don't know. I suggest the way that they want it would be easier. Because if I have to cross the street to go see if it doesn't register, as opposed to do it from my property line.
If anyone's going to
It's
be
easy.
calling in complaining, it's going to be
It's the resident,
a
and they're doing it
resident
from their
that-
own property line.
So can you tell me this code again that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, Robin, would you be able to pull up the conditions again, just because it's helpful to look at them within the
And
context?
I do have the section and everything too. So.
Right, so it's in a table, is where I see it, 11.7.4A.
A.
And then it's note 1 to that table.
And I thought, doesn't it say within our noise ordinance that when noise is measured, it is at the property line of that owner?
Not necessarily.
I think it depends
Where
on,
noise is coming from?
well, because I'm reading from the noise code right now, and that's in this table.
It changes. You have two different ways of measuring, one at the property line, and they're both related to amplified sound, one at the property line and one at the nearest residential property line.
So in section 11.7.6, which is outdoor amplification and music at commercial establishments, we have a different measuring methodology. So it's not at the property line of the nearest adjacent residential property. It's actually, it says the decimal in this construct is measured at the property line of the commercial property at which the sound is being generated, which I believe is what the condition as initially structured contemplated. So that's the point.
But that's at 80 decibels though, right? Not the 45?
That's right. That's right.
So it's at a higher decibel level. If you restrict it to that property line, then they can jack it up to 80. If you say, no, it's not my property line, it's your property line, well, then it's 45.
Can I ask something? Are we going far afield since the conditional use permit is indoor music amplified?
Are we going far afield for what, since it's not commercial amplified music exterior? Is that-
Well, I mean, it's
inside.
It's inside music. I mean,
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about being at the property line and doing this, but at the end of the day, the permit is to have the music.
Yeah, I don't think we're going far afield, but I think that you have to be informed by your
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, I'm not trying to shut
Right.
it down.
No,
I'm just saying,
I understand.
I mean, if you compare it to Matilda's or anybody else or Ebony, this is permitted indoor music, period, end of story, correct? Okay.
45 dBA is a significantly low threshold that may be a moot point either way.
Yeah,
That's
because
kinda what I
first
was-
of all, you're indoors.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There you go. There's the, did you want to see the conditions?
And is there value in being consistent in how we approach measuring DBAs off whose property line?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another topic we might want to have an agenda discussion about, because this idea of different starting points for different sorts of music. I mean, somebody was talking about what code enforcement's going to do. I mean, they're going to pull their hair out when they've got two different starting points to pull their dBA, their decibel meters out. Probably another topic for another day, but no, your point's a great one. I would always prefer to make a measuring tool for a regulatory exercise simpler.
All
All
right.
right, ready?
Yep. Council discussion, you want to put in a motion?
One more point,
Sure.
and could
Yeah.
you, does that go off again?
Went to conditions?
Yeah.
Yeah, there they are.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because we touched it, and I just didn't want to leave it if y'all were, but the measure of the property line, I think I understand where that's about to go. I think it's going to be a default back to the table. I get that. But the 1 hour prior to music ending, did you all want to?
I would just strike it. 'cause
Okay,
I
because
mean,
I agree with you. I think
yeah.
that is terribly unclear.
So hold on, let's read that through. I just want to make sure we're not. Prizes are not-
I have a question for the applicant. Have you all ever measured
Got it.
the DBA at your property line during events?
Ad nauseam. When
And-
we first started, what we did was we brought out an expert and we went at all the different spots. We went, because Valmont was really the only subdivision there. So we did it ad nauseum. We turned up, cranked it up as loud as it would go. We did everything. And this was before all those trees were put in too. Now there's a tree farm, which even offers a larger buffer there. So yes, we did do that. And we never got close to it. So what we're saying is that the way it was originally done was that the decimal level was as it was in the code, which was 50 or 55. But 1 hour before, we would make sure that it went down to 45. That was the purpose of the 1 hour before, that it went down to that.
So even if we were to vote for the 45 at your property line, the risk would be low based on history, based on you measuring during events. True statement?
I would say that that's a limitation that for us, right, we've been operating for 11 years based on a residential point. So what we would do is go on the other side of Belmont, where on the other side of Taylor Road, where the Belmont backyard is, right? And we would have the sound meters there. So again, we've had zero complaints. So we'd like to keep it consistent that the Valmont folks and now Little River, same equidistant, give us that leeway. We're trying to operate a business. And
Yeah. I
that's
don't
why it's
see, I don't see
important.
how you could get over
Ken.
that minor amount because it's permitted for.
Ken, this will probably help me. 11 years ago, what was the code? Like, what was the code 11 years ago where was that section in the code 11
You're
years
in
ago?
luck. I have internalized every
I know.
Milton code, and in fact, the date of where we have
We
made
need to
changes.
just be consistent with the way they operated 11 years ago. It needs to stay the same.
Right.
Yes.
It might help.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
and whispering across what we believe this is meant to state and why it says that 1 hour prior to music ending. It's up until 1 hour prior to music ending. At least it appears that they were subject to the code. And the code would be, what depending on the date and the
50,
time
55.
of what it would be. Right. And then up until 1 hour prior, it dropped to 45.
So we were going based on that code,
So
correct?
that was how it appears, how this is structured now that we're all kind of digging into it. Whether you identify whether that was the property line or not is going to forever remain a mystery because we never had to do it. And we stayed just in vague. It didn't even exist. It just said maximum 45 dBA.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Crawford, we did, sir, measure
Sir,
it. That
public hearing's closed. Sorry.
I think I think the intent of this is to protect the neighbors. And so what is the sound at the neighbor's property line? That to me just makes sense. What is the sound at the road? The road doesn't care. The property owner does. So let's worry about the property owner's property line.
All right. You good?
And then as far as the hour, I think the hour stays because up until that point, they're subject to the regular noise ordinance. And then an hour before, it drops down to 45. And even though, yes, it's higher than 45 before that, they've never had a complaint. So why would we mess up a good thing?
I need to ask about that. And can we put the condition back up again? I mean, okay, so, and again, 11 years ago, I don't recall seeing this. Maybe I did. I mean, maybe I wrote it, as Steve mentioned, but I will say, there we go. So if what this condition means is that before this hour, it's subject just to our normal baseline code, and then this kicks in, I would really want that spelled out somewhere, because right now all of us are sort of, at least I am, scratching my head saying that's not the way it intuitively reads to me. So if that's the way we're going to interpret this, I think there's some additional language that needs to be added to this. Otherwise, I think it just needs to be a standalone condition, strike out the property line, default to footnote 1 on 11.7.4a, and then strike the 1 hour prior to music ending.
All right.
That makes it a standalone condition without any reference to anything else.
But then they lose a right they currently have, which is 50 or 55 or whatever it is before the hour before.
I agree. That's what everybody seems to be the consensus. That's not the way that condition reads. At least the way I read it. It's not, it's got no context.
Right, it's not giving that latitude.
Right. It doesn't, it's
So
not
It's just
contextualized.
conjecture at this point.
Yeah.
And that's such a small amount. I mean, it's probably infinitesimal to the human ear. So where are we?
So Ken, tell me how do you read this, and then how would you structure it to rewrite it what the true intent was?
Okay, well, now that's different. So if we're going to default, say the provisions of the City of Milton noise ordinance apply except 1 hour prior to closing time, is that sort of what the idea is?
No, well, I'm kind of, I want to know what was the true intent? Or was it 45 max dBA the entire time? Is that what the true
Well,
intent
what
was?
I'm hearing is it's simply a function of, to our code enforcement folks, is going to be whatever our code says, whatever the applicable pertinent portion of the code is for the business they're generating. That's all what works until stop an hour before closing time. And then this condition kicks in and it's a different regulatory standard. That's perfectly fine. Again,
Okay.
you have
Well-
the way to paint with that brush.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a good operator.
Right.
Okay, or maybe a great
I
operator.
got it. That
Not
makes
causing
sense.
problems.
I got it. Makes sense.
What is the original language that they've operated on under
The
this whole time?
original
Right here.
original language is everything before you except what I highlighted in orange.
Music and
Okay.
It is the exact
Which is
verbatim.
what Ken is saying might not be crystal clear. The way he just said it is they operate under the regular ordinance as it is up until an hour before it stops, and then it drops down to 45.
That's the way I get it.
It's interesting, and I agree with you. It's funny, we're in this unique position where we have an operator that's never triggered a noise complaint.
Right.
So we've never really had to deal with either the looseness or the flexibility of the language. And so we're doing something we've never had occasion to have to think about.
But it's all predicated on the fact that this applicant is permitted for noise indoors.
Right,
So it's its own animal anyway.
that's right.
You know, it's not like some of our kind of sketchy stuff or the outdoor stuff. All right, so, which is not sketchy. I mean, it's great stuff. I'm just mean it's a combo kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm trying to get there on this.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. Measured at the property, what is in our unified code about the property line?
That's that
It's-
table.
Okay, it's the table.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we reference the table, if we default to the table, and then we take out what? Any
You-
reference to what?
I think you said you mentioned the code as it is for regular noise ordinance, with the exception of up to an hour prior, and then you reference your table.
All right,
You got it?
whack at this. You ready? For the whack?
Give it a shot.
You have more questions?
Why did we not present Ebenezer differently? Why be inconsistent? Why measure at their property line versus the residents of the Roswell neighbors across the street?
Because it's not
And
inside.
that's what the planning commission and we.
They have indoor music too.
Yeah, that's what
I would
was
just
approved
say
at
on
the property line.
Case by case basis, and this is 11 years ago. But I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, I get your point.
Well, it's 12 feet difference. I don't think we have.
I would suggest
Well,
we're
yeah, it's
probably
very-
being
yeah.
more restrictive at Ebenezer because it's newer, whereas they've had access to this for however 11 years or whatever. So why strip it away from them, especially when they've been a good patron?
I mean, this has been buttoned up for so long. I think if we just take it back to the norm.
I think in a way,
I'm not
it's,
trying to impose harm, but there's opportunities where we have to optimize and
Agree.
be consistent and legislate consistently. And that's why I asked how they measured historically to see if this imposes any risk. Is it a little bit more limiting? Perhaps. But 45, I think even at their property line, if we were to measure that historically, my guess is it's probably not in violation. Otherwise you would have heard anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's
to
something
me,
we can,
it's a cleanup process.
Yeah, it's a
just
cleanup that we can
consistent
do.
way to legislate.
we got to get those interns back.
Well, but but Phil, it sounds to me like the the code already contemplates this by saying if it's the neighbor's property line, it's one thing. If it's your property line, it's 85. Am I right?
So what was conditioned for Ebenezer was the lesser, so it says,
But I think what Ken read earlier is you can have it be the property line, and then in that case, it could be amped up to 85, or it can be the closest residential property line, and then it's 50 or 55 or whatever. So it already contemplates being either or. It's not an inconsistency. It's what makes sense in any given situation. If you've got a property that is totally surrounded by water, who cares what the sound is at the edge of that property? It's the people that live around the water that you got to be concerned about their property line.
I mean, look, I don't want to whip a good applicant. This is something that we need to clean up in a process that, and I think it's probably just fine tuning because we're not besieged with complaints. Certainly no complaints here and nominal elsewhere. Is that fair? I think that's fair. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I, and Councilmember quickly, I want to ask a question of Robin real quick about just the organizational structure of these. So Robin, as I'm looking at these 1, 2, and 6, it seems to me they're all sort of getting at the same thing. And I wonder if maybe collapsing them and then having a lead in. So City of Milton noise ordinance decibel limits shall apply on property except on 1, Friday through Saturday, 9 a.m. Number 2, Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Number 3, barn facility location, and have those under, so there's the general nomenclature of City of Milton noise ordinance decibel limits shall apply on property except on boom, boom, boom. And then as opposed to the orange, we have measured as set forth in note 1 in table 11.7.4a and strike 1 hour prior to music ending on all 3 of those. That makes sense? You see what you've done? You've just taken all 3 that address the decibel limits, put them under a header that the City of Milton noise ordinance applies except for those 3. And it's, an hour before closing is when that applies.
So how do you want us to codify that tonight?
All right, except for which, give me the 3 again.
Right. The
1,
3,
2, and
Robin, I just want to make
6,
sure, Robin, are you
7?
tracking with what I'm doing?
Yes,
Saying that
yeah.
all 3, 1, 2, and 6 need to be under the, so City of Milton noise ordinance, decibel limits shall apply on the property except on 1, 2, and 6. Does that make
Right.
sense?
No.
Right.
So that's the first part. And the other one is that default to table 11.7.4.a with note 1 added to the table. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean,
And
can
then-
we just reference that section instead of getting into all of it? Because
Right, it is. It's easier just to reference the section. So footnote 1, 11.7.4a, which is where the orange underline is right now. And then we're striking on all 3 of those paragraphs 1 hour prior to music ending.
All right.
Ken, my only concern, if you strike the 1 hour thing, now you're giving them the ability to go up to 50 or 55.
Oh, you're right, because we're putting the default
Correct.
language in. You're
Yeah,
right.
right. So that needs to stay in if we're going to keep it the same.
Apologies.
I was gonna say, we're just at where? On the table stuff?
Just do the table.
No, it's because that's what was causing the confusion was the 1 hour prior.
Right.
But because we've now said you default to the City of Milton noise ordinance, you're right, the 1 hour prior stays in.
Okay.
Because that's when the lower standard kicks in.
All right, so let's rework this. So what is the motion?
The motion is, I'm assuming it's just to approve the use permit, right?
Correct.
But changing the conditions as displayed to, with respect to 1, 2, and 6 on the current string, they're going to be City of Milton noise ordinance decibel limits shall apply on the property except on 1, 2, and 6.
Except for an hour prior to closing for
Right.
1, 2, and 6.
1, 2, and 6, right.
That's how it would be ordered.
Okay, but you all proffered original language. Are we incorporating, are we going back?
1, 2, and 6.
Make sure we get it right.
Hey,
But for
Kim?
sure, we're deleting the measured at the property line.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, Ken, the applicant proffered that we go back to the original language under which they've operated. And I think we had some agreement here on that. So wouldn't we want to codify that first? Is the decimal,
You're applying it to that table. I don't have the table in front of me. If we scroll a little bit on the bottom, it says how you're measuring it. Subsection 1. As long as we apply that table, then subsection 1 will apply, which will put it at the nearest residential occupied property.
So I think, Carol, if you're going to do this, it would be, we want to approve defaulting to the city's noise ordinance as per, and if you want to say wherever the city noise ordinance is written, and according to whatever that table is, except for 1 hour prior to the end of music, 4 sections, the gist of 1, 2, and 6.
all right.
I just want to make sure we're not making,
That's
okay.
what I think. I just mean, he said the motion.
Okay.
Like, well.
All right, so if the motion is want to default to the original Milton noise ordinance.
No.
Oh, why? Why?
The original noise ordinance, I mean.
What's the one that they proffered that we're talking about?
It's the original noise
conditions
ordinance.
of
It's the
use permit.
existing.
It's the existing noise
Okay.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Which was the original, but who would mention?
Well, we don't.
Okay. It sometimes takes a village. All right. So you want to default to the existing noise ordinance. Mr. Mayor, make a motion. It's a group
Thank
motion.
you. Okay, I was hoping you were going to do that.
I was going to do that. Okay. So we want to default,
Approve the use permit.
approve the use permit with the existing noise ordinance language, which has governed this facility for 11 years.
And according to the table.
In accordance to the footnote of the table 11.7.4.a,
Footnote 1.
with reference to footnote 1, with changing the conditions or excluding the conditions of 1, 2, and 6,
No, except for 1 hour prior to.
except for 1 hour prior to
Closing.
closing.
Conditions 1, 2, and 6 will
Closing
apply.
1, 2, and 6. Okay, that is the motion.
Second.
All right. Ken, are you good with that motion?
I am, because I think at this point, the minutes, we understand the intent of the council, we get it, and we will make sure the conditions match what you all have just done.
Okay.
Okay, so we have something to clean up on our side, but thank you very much for your patience. Okay, thank you.
Did you have
All
to
right,
make a
do
vote?
your
Yeah, I'm
thing.
good. All right.
It's a motion.
You have to vote. You have to vote.
Yeah, well, I got
Oh,
a
we're gonna
motion from
vote. Get
Councilman
ready to do this
Cookerly.
thing.
Did that- Who
I
seconded?
second.
Seconded from Councilman Haney to approve the use permit, agenda item number 25-192 with the
What happened there?
conditions recommended by
Voted
Councilman
by
Cookerly.
itself.
Hit refresh.
Wait a second, we got she wants
It's
to
voted
change
by
it.
itself.
Yeah, you can do it. Do
I
it.
think it's,
Hit submit. It'll, there you go.
I'm a yay, but
I'd like to
fixed.
I'd like to thank Councilmember Haney for his steady hand and clear vision. Thank you.
Yeah, so Andre, you're now you're. Bill.
I'm the nay.
Oh, you're the day. So is that, when you pressed it, is that, you can't,
I must be,
I think I went to mine.
so he's count,
Did the wrong
so
line,
his
wrong line.
is perfect.
I'm nay.
Okay, so I think that, okay.
Oh, now.
All right, now we got it. Okay. That motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hopefully the next one will be more.
Okay. Well, we got it cleaned up. Please call the next item.
Precision.
Do we have another item? Yeah.
That next item is consideration of an ordinance for the rescission of an existing use permit for a rural event facility located at 14505 Batesville Road. It's agenda item number 25193.
Get my, I'm sorry, there. So, let me get my, up.
Just like.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, I don't need a slide, but basically, staff is requesting that you all consider a rescission of U 14-02, which was the original use permit for the Little River Farms Rural Event Facility, so that this just approved use permit can be validated. So that is what the purpose of this rescission is before you.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and now open it for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for approval of agenda item number 25-193.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Haney and a second from Councilor Cookerly to approve agenda item number 25-193. The voting's open. And,
Bill, you're yay.
Yay.
okay, that motion passes unanimously.
I think they're not.
Okay, well, City Clerk, please stay on the next item.
That's definitely it.
Stay on the next item.
The next item is consideration of an ordinance for the rescission of an existing use permit for a bed and breakfast located at 14505 Batesville Road, agenda item number 25194.
Again, tonight, this is before you to consider rescission of the original use permit for the bed and breakfast U 14-01. It is no longer being operated, and staff is requesting that you rescind this ordinance.
Okay, any public comment?
There are none, sir.
Okay, I'll open it for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to, I'm sorry, agenda item number 2, make a motion to approve agenda item number 25-194. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, motion from Councilor Cookerly and a second from Councilor Verhoff to approve agenda item number 25-194. Please place your votes. That motion.
Early that time.
I did. I got you, yay. There you go.
All right, that motion passes. Motion passes unanimously.
What was that noise?
Some issues here. Okay, there are no unfinished business items. We'll move on to new business. Will City Clerk please sound the item?
Mayor, that new business item is consideration of an intergovernmental agreement for the provision of election services between Fulton County and the City of Milton for the November 4th, 2025 general municipal election. It's agenda item number 25207. Our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Stacy Inglis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to make this brief. So the IGA before you is an agreement between the City of Milton and Fulton County for the administration of our November 4th, 2025 general municipal election. As we've done in the past election cycles, with the exception of 2023, this agreement allows Fulton County to conduct the election on behalf of the city. And the IGA outlines each party's responsibilities and includes the potential for the county to conduct a runoff if it's needed. Due to a statewide special election for the Public Service Commissioner for Districts 2 and 3, they're just scheduled on the same date. That means there's no cost to the city for the conduction of the general election. However, if there is a runoff that's required, which we will know after the potential for runoff after qualifying week, we will have to pay for the pro rata share of that cost, which is estimated to be around $83,795.34. Around. That's what they projected. The staff recommends approval of the IGA so that we can move forward with the elections. I do want to say that there is an upcoming agenda item that you will see on September 3rd to formally adopt the Fulton County precincts and polling locations. So for our election cycle, since we did our own elections in 2023, we changed those precincts and polling locations. So this is reverting them back to Fulton counties. And all those required illegal ads are running in the paper currently. So you'll see that coming before you on September 3rd. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Any questions for Stacy? Any public comment?
There are none.
Yeah. Alice Hickerson, you want to say anything? You good? All right. All right. With that, I'll open it for a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item number 25-207.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Kramer and a second from Councilor Jacobus to approve agenda item number 25-207. Please place your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then any council to report on? Anything?
Nope.
Hearing none. Have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
All right, that's Haney and then Jacobus. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous.
It says it's not open. Is that all?
Okay.
Gotta get it over that sheet of paper, hang on.
That was gonna be an hour and a half. Sorry, Hickerson.
Make a motion to reconvene.
Okay, motion to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, y'all.
Good night.